You've probably noticed how so many people chase relationships that leave them feeling drained, anxious, or like they constantly have to perform. And yet, deep down, what you want is something entirely different. You don't want a love that feels like a test you're always failing. You don't want to wake up every morning wondering if you're enough. You don't want to tiptoe around, afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of being abandoned the moment you show your true self. What you want is peace. A relationship that feels like home, like you can breathe, like you are finally allowed to be exactly who you are. And the truth is, that kind of relationship isn't found by accident. It's attracted by the choices you make long before that person walks into your life. The first thing you need to know is that peace doesn't come from the other person magically having all the right qualities. Peace comes when you stop treating love like a battlefield, where you have to win someone over. Think about the last time you were with someone, and you felt that subtle pressure, the need to prove yourself, to keep them interested, to be more than who you naturally are. That pressure wasn't coming from them alone. It was also coming from the part of you that believed love had to be earned through effort, instead of received through authenticity. The moment you believe you have to hustle for love, you set yourself up for relationships that feel like work instead of rest. Imagine what would change if you walked into love with the unshakable belief that your presence is enough, that you don't have to overcompensate with charm or bend your boundaries to avoid conflict or say yes when you mean no. Imagine what happens when you no longer approach dating like an audition, but instead like a genuine meeting between two whole people. That's where peace begins. Not when you meet someone who calms you down, but when you've already calmed the war happening inside yourself. But here's the mistake most people make. They confuse intensity with connection. That spark, that rush, that magnetic pull that feels almost addictive. You convince yourself it must mean something deep. And yet, over and over again, those relationships leave you exhausted, second-guessing, and questioning your worth. That's because intensity is often born out of fear. Fear of losing, fear of not being enough, fear of being abandoned. It's the adrenaline of insecurity disguised as chemistry. Real connection feels radically different. It doesn't spike your nervous system, it soothes it. It doesn't make you chase, it invites you to stay. It doesn't make you wonder where you stand, it makes it obvious that you belong. When you start to recognize the difference between pressure and peace, you'll see that so many of your old patterns were built on chasing the wrong thing. You weren't looking for peace, you were looking for validation. And validation always runs out. Someone can tell you you're beautiful 1,000 times, and the 1,001st time you'll still feel anxious if you haven't built the belief inside yourself that you're already worthy. That's why the most important step toward attracting a peaceful relationship is building a peaceful relationship with yourself. Not in the cliché way of bubble baths and affirmations, though those can help, but in the deeper way of refusing to abandon yourself just to keep someone else close. Because every time you silence your truth to avoid losing someone, you are training your nervous system to believe that love requires self-betrayal. And that belief is what magnetizes pressure instead of peace. Think back to the moments in your past when you ignored that quiet voice inside you. The one that said, "This doesn't feel right." The one that knew you were giving more than you were receiving. The one that warned you when the arguments became circular, when your needs became invisible, when your joy started to shrink. Each time you ignored that voice, you sent yourself a message. My peace doesn't matter as much as keeping them. But here's the truth that changes everything. Your peace is the very thing that will attract the right person. The kind of love you want cannot exist in a space where you are constantly betraying yourself. It only grows when you honor your boundaries, speak your truth, and choose not to beg for scraps of affection. You may feel a fear rise when you think of living this way. You may wonder, if I stop proving myself, if I stop bending, if I stop performing, won't people leave me? And the answer is yes, some will. The ones who only stayed because of the version of you that made them comfortable, the version of you that overextended, the version of you that shrank your needs to make theirs bigger. They might leave, but the ones who remain, they will be the ones who can love the real you. They will be the ones who bring peace, not pressure. And isn't that what you've been craving all along? So much of your life changes when you stop equating love with struggle. You start noticing that peace doesn't mean boring. It doesn't mean passionless. It doesn't mean set. Peace means you are no longer addicted to the highs and lows that come from instability. Peace means that instead of waiting for the next argument, you are free to enjoy the present. Peace means you don't have to guess how someone feels about you, because they show you consistent. And when that becomes your standard, everything else starts to shift. You'll notice you attract different kinds of people. You'll notice you walk away sooner from situations that don't feel right. You'll notice that your heart, instead of being weighed down with anxiety, finally has space for joy, for laughter, for the kind of intimacy that only grows when two people feel safe with each other. But to attract that relationship, you must be willing to stand in your truth, even when it feels uncomfortable. You must be willing to risk someone leaving, rather than risk abandoning yourself. You must believe that the right person will not be repelled by your peace, but drawn to it. Because the love you are looking for is not fragile. It is not conditional on you performing. It is not something you have to hustle for. It is steady. It is safe. It is calm. And it is only found when you are brave enough to stop chasing intensity and start choosing alignment. The journey begins with you asking yourself one simple but powerful question. Am I looking for peace, or am I looking for validation? Because once you know the answer, you'll see exactly why your past relationships felt the way they did. And once you change the question, you change the pattern. Suddenly, you no longer tolerate people who thrive on keeping you uncertain. You no longer confuse drama for depth. You no longer sacrifice your inner calm for someone else's approval. Instead, you hold steady. You wait. You trust. And in doing so, you send out a different signal to the world, one that calls in a kind of love that doesn't leave you guessing, doesn't leave you exhausted, and doesn't leave you empty. It calls in a love that feels like peace. Once you begin to see how peace and pressure have shaped your relationships, you start realizing that everything changes when you choose differently at the very beginning. Because attraction isn't just about who excites you in the first few dates. It's about what you're training yourself to accept. If your standard is based on intensity, you will always fall for the ones who keep you guessing. But when your standard is based on peace, your heart recalibrates. You stop seeing consistency as boring and start seeing it as the most intoxicating form of safety. You stop confusing unpredictability with passion and start recognizing it as chaos disguised as romance. Here's the truth you might have missed. The people you allow into your life teach you what love feels like. Every time you accept crumbs, you are teaching yourself that crumbs are enough. Every time you settle for words without actions, you are training yourself to believe that empty promises are love. Every time you let someone's inconsistencies slide, you are sending your nervous system a message. This is normal. This is what I should expect. And then you wonder why peace feels so foreign. It feels foreign because you haven't been practicing it. You've been practicing anxiety, practicing uncertainty, practicing chase. But when you start practicing peace, when you hold out for someone who actually makes your soul feel rested, something extraordinary happens. Peace becomes familiar. It becomes magnetic. It becomes the only thing your heart is willing to recognize as love. But here's where it gets tricky. Sometimes when peace finally shows up, you resist it. Think about that. You meet someone who is kind, consistent, who communicates clearly, who actually shows up, and you feel suspicious. You tell yourself it must be too easy, or maybe they're hiding something, or maybe you just don't feel the same spark. What's really happening is your nervous system doesn't know how to handle peace yet. It has been wired for pressure, for drama, for the adrenaline rush of unpredictability. So when calmness comes, it feels strange. It feels unfamiliar. It even feels a little dull. But that's not because peace is dull. It's because your body has been addicted to the high and crash of pressure. This is why healing is essential. Because without healing, you will reject the very thing you're praying for. You have to retrain your heart to see peace as attractive. That means slowing down long enough to actually feel what's happening inside you instead of chasing the rush. That means catching yourself when you start craving the person who makes you anxious and asking, is this attraction Or is this addiction? That means giving the calm, consistent, respectful person a real chance, even if at first it doesn't trigger the fireworks you're used to. Because what you've called fireworks in the past were often warning signals, the storm before the chaos. And now you're learning to see the beauty in the steady flame, the kind that warms you without burning you out. Another piece of attracting peaceful love is learning to listen when someone shows you who they are. How many times have you ignored the red flags because you didn't want to lose the connection? You told yourself it was just a phase, just stress, just a misunderstanding. You minimized your intuition because you didn't want to start over. And yet, deep down, you knew the truth. Peaceful love doesn't require you to explain away bad behavior. It doesn't require you to constantly manage someone else's moods, or to justify why they can't meet your needs, or to wait endlessly for them to change. Peaceful love reveals itself in consistency. It shows up in someone doing what they said they would do. It shows up in actions that match words. It shows up in their ability to handle conflict without destroying your sense of safety. And once you hold that as your standard, you stop wasting time on the ones who can't give. And here's something you might not realize yet. Your boundaries are not walls that keep love away. They are the filters that let the right kind of love through. Without boundaries, you attract anyone. With boundaries, you attract the right one. Peaceful love is born in the space where you refuse to abandon yourself for temporary attention. That's why boundaries feel so scary at first. Because when you say no to what drains you, you're left with space. Space that feels lonely. Space that makes you doubt if anyone will ever fill it. But that space is sacred. It's the waiting room where peace prepares to enter. If you fill it too quickly with pressure and chaos, you miss the very thing you're craving. So much of this comes down to courage, the courage to walk away from almost right so that you can find right. The courage to stop calling instability excitement. The courage to trust that someone who values peace will also value you. Because peaceful love is not a myth. It's not some fairy tale. It's real, but it's rare. Because it requires both people to be healed enough not to need pressure to feel alive. And you can't wait for someone else to create that for you. You have to go first. You have to decide that your life, your body, your spirit deserve peace. That decision is magnetic. It reshapes the way you carry yourself. It changes the energy you put into the world. And people feel it. The wrong ones will sense they can't manipulate you, and they'll move on. The right ones will sense that they can rest with you, and they'll move close. Think about how different your future looks when peace becomes your new standard. Imagine dating without the constant second guessing. Imagine being with someone who doesn't make you anxious when they don't text back because you already know where you stand. Imagine disagreements that don't escalate into explosions but lead to deeper understanding. Imagine love that feels like walking barefoot on soft ground instead of stepping on broken glass. That's the future that opens when you stop entertaining pressure and start choosing peace. But you can't just imagine it. You have to embody it. You have to show up in your own life with the same calmness and clarity you want to attract. That means speaking your truth without fear. That means respecting your own boundaries, even when it costs you short-term attention. That means treating yourself the way you want someone else to treat you, with patience, with kindness, with consistency. Because like attracts like. If you are filled with inner chaos, you will keep finding chaotic people. But if you cultivate inner peace, you will naturally align with someone who carries the same energy. And here's something powerful to remember. Peace doesn't mean there's never conflict. Peace doesn't mean silence or avoidance. Peace doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. Peace means that even when conflict arises, it is handled with respect. It means that instead of fearing arguments, you see them as opportunities to grow closer. It means that instead of exploding or shutting down, you stay present, stay grounded, stay calm. That is the kind of environment where love can actually deepen instead of decay. The love you're looking for isn't about avoiding problems. It's about creating a safe foundation where problems can be faced without fear. And once you start to believe that this is possible, you'll stop settling for anything less. You'll look back on the old versions of yourself. The one who chased, who overgave, who ignored their intuition, and you'll feel compassion, but you'll also feel strength. Because you'll see that every time you let go of pressure, you moved one step closer to peace. And that peace will no longer feel like a luxury. It will feel like a birthright, something you no longer beg for, but simply allow, something you no longer doubt, but deeply trust, something you no longer chase, but quietly attract. Because peace is not the absence of love. It is the soil where real love grows. And now you're beginning to understand how to create it, how to protect it, and most importantly, how to recognize it when it finally arrives. The moment you begin to choose peace over pressure, life starts testing you. Suddenly, people from your past reappear, or new faces enter your life carrying the same old patterns dressed in slightly different clothes. It feels like the universe is asking, are you really ready for this new standard, or will you fall back into the old familiar cycle? And this is where most people slip. They recognize that they want peace, but when the loneliness grows heavy, or when the wrong person gives them a sudden burst of attention, they give in. They tell themselves it's harmless. They tell themselves they can handle it. But what they don't realize is that every compromise chips away at the very foundation they're trying to build. Peace isn't just about choosing the right relationship. It's about refusing the wrong ones, even when they temporarily soothe your longing. You've felt that pull before, the text that comes late at night, the half-hearted apologies, the breadcrumb gestures that reignite hope but never deliver substance. Part of you knows it's pressure, not peace. But another part clings to the comfort of the familiar. That's the danger, because the familiar will always feel safer than the unknown, even when the familiar is slowly destroying you. You tell yourself, at least I know how this works. At least I know how to navigate their moods. At least I know what to expect. But do you, or are you just trading the fear of loneliness for the guarantee of instability? Peaceful love asks you to step into the unknown. It asks you to endure the silence between letting go of what drains you and receiving what nourishes you. And that silence is uncomfortable. It feels like emptiness, like loss, like waiting for something that may never come. But it isn't empty. That silence is where you grow. That silence is where you prove to yourself that you can stand alone. And when you can stand alone, you are finally ready to stand with someone without losing yourself. Most people sabotage their chance at peaceful love because they never master that silence. They rush to fill it, to numb it, to escape it. They go back to the ex who never gave them peace. They start a new situationship with someone who feels exciting but unstable. They lower their standards because they think peace will never show up. And then when peace does appear, they're too tangled in pressure to recognize. That's why your discipline in these moments matters more than you think. Every time you say no to pressure, every time you honor your loneliness instead of running from it, you are rewriting the script of your life. You are sending a signal that you're no longer available for chaos. And that signal is what clears the space for peace to arrive. But let's be honest, it's not just other people who create pressure. Sometimes it's you. Sometimes the war is inside your own mind. You overanalyze every message. You assume silence means rejection. You create stories about what someone's behavior means before they've even spoken. You replay conversations in your head, picking apart every word you said, wondering if you ruined everything. That's pressure too. It's the pressure of not feeling safe inside your own skin. The pressure of trying to control outcomes you cannot control. The pressure of needing certainty when certainty can only come with time. And if you want a relationship that feels like peace, you must learn how to calm that storm within. That doesn't mean silencing your thoughts. It means shifting them. It means reminding yourself that someone else's behavior is not a verdict on your worth. It means choosing to believe that the right person will not be scared away by your humanity. It means grounding yourself in the reality that you don't have to chase, that what's meant for you cannot be lost. Peaceful love is impossible if your inner world is a battlefield. Because even if someone amazing shows up, you'll sabotage it by projecting your fears onto them. You'll read into their every move. You'll suffocate the relationship with your doubt. And eventually you'll push away the very peace you wanted to keep. That's why the work is never just about finding someone who brings peace. It's about becoming someone who can hold it. Think about how many times your own mind has stolen joy from you. You were with someone kind, And instead of relaxing into their affection, you worried it wouldn't last. You got the attention you craved, and instead of enjoying it, you feared it would disappear. You finally found consistency, and instead of trusting it, you looked for hidden flaws. That's not love's fault. That's the imprint of pressure living inside you. But here's the liberating truth. If the pressure lives inside you, then so does the peace. You can train your heart to respond differently. You can practice grounding yourself instead of spiraling. You can practice receiving love instead of questioning it. You can practice sitting in uncertainty instead of trying to control every outcome. And every time you practice, you make peace more natural. So how do you practice? By catching the little moments. When you notice yourself spiraling, you pause, you breathe, you remind yourself, if this is real, I don't have to force it. If it's not real, no amount of forcing will make it last. When you feel the urge to chase someone who's pulling away, you stop. You ask yourself, am I chasing them or am I running from my own loneliness? When you start analyzing every detail of someone's behavior, you shift the question. Instead of asking what they're thinking, what am I feeling? Does this connection actually feel like peace? These tiny shifts repeated again and again rewire your nervous system. They break the cycle of pressure and create space for peace to take root. And slowly something changes. You stop feeling desperate when someone doesn't text back right away. You stop trying to prove yourself to people who haven't earned access to your heart. You stop mistaking chaos for chemistry. And when peace shows up, you're not suspicious. You're ready. You're able to receive it. You're able to recognize it. You're able to stay with it long enough for it to grow. Because peaceful love isn't instant fireworks. It's the steady warmth of a fire that never goes out. It's not the roller coaster, it's the steady path that still takes you somewhere beautiful. And when you're healed enough to see that, you realize it was never boring. It was always everything you wanted, but you couldn't see it until now. And here's where it becomes even more powerful. Peaceful love doesn't just change your relationship, it changes your entire life. When your relationship is peaceful, you suddenly have energy for everything else. You're not wasting hours replaying arguments in your head. You're not drained from constant conflict. You're not walking on eggshells, terrified of setting someone off. Instead, you're free. Free to focus on your dreams. Free to pursue your passions. Free to build a life that feels whole. Peace in love creates peace everywhere. And that's why it matters so much. Because the right relationship doesn't just give you a partner, it gives you back your power. So ask yourself again, what are you choosing today? Are you choosing peace, or are you choosing pressure? Are you holding out for the steady flame, or are you chasing the dangerous fireworks? Are you honoring your own worth, or are you betraying yourself just to keep someone close? The answers aren't found in what you say you want. They're found in the choices you make every single day. Because you don't attract what you wish for, you attract what you tolerate. And the moment you refuse to tolerate pressure, you open the door